Great. Can you all hear me? Is my microphone working?
Yes.
Great. So I want to start this with a few caveats. This is a work in progress. It's something I'm really interested in sort of carrying forward into future scholarship, so I'm really excited to be presenting it today. And I thank you for listening. I really want this to be accessible. I think the alternative title of this presentation is I Love Affect Theory, and you can too. So please ask questions, ask for clarification, whatever you need. I want to be here. A brief content warning. I will quickly mention in-game suicide and in-game violence and killing as strategic actions. And I use a lot of fan art, so art credits are all at the end. And with that, let's get started. When Blizzard's team-based multiplayer online first-person shooter, Overwatch, was released in the summer of 2016, one of the most immediately popular and powerful combinations was that of rocket-launching soldier Pharah and angelic healer Mercy. Almost immediately following the game's release, the pair accrued a large fan following that shipped them as a romantic couple. Despite a lack of interaction between the characters in in-game dialogue and official Overwatch media like comics and online videos, the Pharah-Mercy pairing, hereafter referred to as Pharmercy, and I will refer to the in-game combination as the Pharah-Mercy combo, has become one of the most popular among fans, and certainly the most popular queer pairing. This fan following seems to suggest that in-game synergy translates to romantic chemistry in players' minds. Indeed, playing the game with this pairing in mind, strategic actions like healing or protecting the other character seem to evoke a sense of intimacy between Pharah and Mercy. What kinds of theoretical frameworks can we use to understand and trace out this intimate feeling as a part of the gameplay experience of Pharah and Mercy players? What does it mean for Overwatch, for its fans, and for queer fandoms in general? For players to feel a sense of intimacy within a Pharah-Mercy combination? And how can we use Pharmercy to think about queer relationships in games more broadly? In this presentation, I examine the Pharmercy ship as a starting point to argue for a shift in focus among players and developers from the representation of romance in video games to its sensation. Drawing from theories of affect and sensation, I conduct a close reading of the actions and strategies inherent in playing as part of a Pharah-Mercy combo. I argue that these actions cultivate modes of affective engagement that implicate players in sensing an intimate relationship between the characters. Then, I consider the implications of centering sensation in formal analyses of video game romances and intimate relationships. I argue that if players are made to feel a sense of intimacy through gameplay, this feeling is as much a romance as one that is represented via dialogue or narrative. Given the centrality of gameplay to video games, I argue that intimacy engendered by gameplay should be considered by fans and developers not as subtext, but text. I end by considering the queer potentialities of this conclusion, calling on fans and developers to center sensation in their considerations of queer video game romances, and to claim relationships that feel queer as queer. Pharmercy, I argue, is a sign of the potential of games in particular to create new queer romance spaces through sensation. So in order to engage in a formal analysis of Pharah-Mercy combinations in Overwatch, it's necessary to define a theoretical framework from which we can stage this analysis. Here, I want to draw on affect theory, particularly Deleuze's logic of sensation, to understand better the formal mechanisms by which the intimacy of the Pharah-Mercy combo makes itself felt. Brian Masumi, in his translation of Deleuze and Guattari's A Thousand Plateaus, defines affect as an ability to affect and be affected. It is a pre-personal intensity corresponding to the passage from one experiential state of the body to another, and implying an augmentation or diminution in that body's capacity to act. In contrast with the internal and personal quality of feelings and the social outward-oriented emotions, affect describes the vital, unstructured potential that acts as a kind of force on bodies with which it comes into contact. In recent years, media scholars have turned to affect in order to recenter the intense, embodied, and sometimes indescribable ways that text can impact us. Identifying the affective powers and valences of media texts and the ways those powers operate formally allows us to better contextualize those texts socially, politically, and in relation to the fandoms they create. Studying affect also allows us to decouple texts from authorial intent. Reading for the affects within texts means considering those texts as capable of exerting forces independent of what authors may have intended consciously or unconsciously. In terms of affect, a text like Overwatch acts as an autonomous agent from its creators, generating affective forces that can be traced through close reading. Within these considerations of the affective powers of text, I utilize as my central framework Deleuze's logic of sensation. Deleuze discusses the logic of sensation in the context of the paintings of Francis Bacon as a process of rendering invisible forces visible, in contrast to the logic of representation, which only describes or recreates what is already visible. He posits that sensation is that which is transmitted directly and avoids the detour and boredom of conveying a story. Deleuze uses the example of Bacon's paintings of the screaming Pope. Rather than depict the horror directly, Bacon paints the reaction to it. Deleuze notes, the horror is multiplied because it is inferred from the scream. In the context of video games, we might see the logic of representation as encompassing dialogue and narrative events, while sensation involves moments, mechanics, and actions that engender certain feelings. I'm going to jump out for a second and say that I understand that there's lots of long words in the ways that Masumi and Deleuze describe affect and sensation. Part of affect is that you can't really describe it in words. I don't know if Deleuze knew what he was talking about. But I think maybe what is to be taken from this is a sort of sense of affect as this force that moves from texts to bodies and bodies to texts that impacts you in ways that you can't totally describe. So, within this framework, we can now formally analyze the Pharmercy combination to understand the ways in which it engenders a sense of intimacy. First, I'll analyze each character individually with an eye towards the modes of affective engagement encouraged by their toolkits. And then, I want to examine the strategies and flows commonly experienced within a Pharmercy combination. So, Mercy. Mercy is, of the support characters in Overwatch, the most oriented towards healing and buffing teammates. While other supports like Zenyatta and Ana can inflict damage and debuffs to enemies, in addition to healing the team, Mercy has no debuffing abilities and her gun is comparatively weak. Rather, effective Mercy players focus on healing teammates with her powerful healing ray, and on buffing them with her secondary fire when they're at full health or on the offensive. Playing as Mercy thus encourages attention and care. In order to know when to heal and when to buff, Mercy must watch and listen to her teammates closely and anticipate threats to them. Mercy is also defined by her ability to fly to her teammates. This mobility enables her both to go where she is needed most and to escape threats quickly. This means that Mercy must rely on and trust her teammates to stay close to her. Many Mercy players express frustration at teams that leave her alone and thus prone to being killed before she can escape. Well, they smash the need healing dialogue button. We've all been there. In short, playing as Mercy encourages a mode of affective engagement characterized by attention and care, attunement to others' needs, and a sort of vulnerability implied by the process of trusting others to be there when needed. Pharah, in contrast, is a highly offensive hero characterized by her unique affinity for providing air support. Pharah uses a jetpack and a slow-firing rocket launcher to hover in the air and fire high-impact shots at enemies. While skilled Pharah players can kill enemies with one direct shot, Pharah more often causes heavy damage to enemies without killing them, setting them up for kills by teammates on the ground. This is where I'm starting to use a little bit of death language and stuff, so content warning again. The sense of power enabled by Pharah's high vantage point is mitigated by her fragility. If Pharah is not careful, she's easily shot down by focus fire or snipers. This means that in addition to relying on teammates on the ground to follow up on her airstrikes, Pharah must depend on healers to keep her healthy. Playing as Pharah is often a nerve-wracking experience. Players must be brave enough to make quick and dangerous plays, and cautious enough to pull back from those engagements before she's killed. Here as well, there's a sense of Pharah's vulnerability to the team that stands in contrast to other offensive characters who could play more independently, like, say, Soldier 76. A Pharah-Mercy combination mitigates some of the affective problematics inherent in playing as either character individually. Farah's ability to hover in the air means that she's often well located as an escape for Mercy. Skilled Farah players locate themselves strategically so as to give Mercy an escape from encroaching enemies. Farah's high vantage point also means that Mercy has better visibility over the rest of her team, allowing her to better care for them. That being said, while strategically Mercy should move between characters, it often feels safer for her to stay close to Farah because of her mobility. This encourages a sense that even if the player moves around the arena to heal others, she always returns to Farah, which in competitive circles is called pocketing. Mercy, in turn, provides both healing and buffing for Farah. The former allows her to sustain engagements more effectively, while the latter empowers her to act more independently from the rest of the team by following through on kills. In other words, playing with Farah and Mercy together feels better. Farah feels more secure, powerful, and reliable, while Mercy feels safer and more mobile. Skilled Farah-Mercy combinations communicate their location and movements so that they know when to push together, when to retreat together, and when to regroup with the rest of their team. This creates a flow of gameplay that encourages both players to rely heavily on each other and to anticipate and nullify threats to each other. When either one dies, the other is often left in a state of anxiety and vulnerability, and unfortunately, it is often strategically more viable for the remaining player, particularly Farah, to kill themselves and respawn with their partner. There's no narrative evidence in Overwatch of any relationship at all between Farah and Mercy, let alone an intimate one. However, the modes of affective engagement, encouraged by strategies and actions inherent to the Farah-Mercy combination, cultivate the sensation of intimacy. Deleuze's sensation, quote, exists at different levels, in different orders, or in different domains, while those domains are not different sensations, but different orders of one and the same sensation. It is the nature of sensation to develop a constitutive difference of level, a plurality of constituting domains. Here, we might say that the sensation of intimacy between Farah and Mercy is constituted at the levels of action, healing, buffing, protecting, anticipation, positioning oneself in order to mitigate potential threats to the other, and communication, synchronizing actions in order to act more effectively together. These levels can operate simultaneously or individually, but together they create the feeling of a partnership defined by caring for, relying on, and trusting the other. It's understandable then that players might translate Farah and Mercy's in-game synergy to viewing the two as romantic partners. Playing as either character feels like playing out a romantic partnership, and that effective power makes speculating on a romance between the two extremely resonant. One could say that they have chemistry, a chemistry that moves from gameplay out into fan creations and practices. So, why should we care? Having established the ways that gameplay synergy translates to the sensation of intimacy, in the context of Pharmercy, the question now becomes, what is the significance of this affective power, and for what? And what is the significance of reading for it? I posit that Pharmercy is a useful starting point to consider new ways to understand, write about, and develop video game romances, particularly queer romances. Using the logic of sensation to think through video game romances allows us to move away from questions of representation without ignoring them entirely, rather than, or in addition to, asking what is said or depicted directly. We can ask how it feels and what is produced by that mode of affective engagement. In the context of video game experiences, which often, and particularly in the case of Overwatch, are as much about the way gameplay feels as they are about narrative, I argue that the sensation of gameplay is not subtext, but should be read as textual as much as dialogue or narrative elements. In addition to creating fruitful passive academic inquiry, this recentering of sensation as integral to the experience of video game romance allows fans to claim gameplay experiences that feel romantic as romantic, including queer romances like Pharmercy. It empowers us to center our lived experiences of games not as anomalies or individuated feelings, but as integral parts of the games themselves. It also challenges game developers to think more deeply about the ways their games feel and to integrate queer intimacy into the mechanics and modes of affective engagement of their games. And finally, the centering of sensation compels us to think more about sensation's capacity to bear out queer intimacy in a way beyond that of representation. This speaks to the potential of games to create experiences that, in unique and sometimes unexpected ways, make themselves felt. Thank you.